The 6 ways that lordosis affects your body, we're going to look at 3 primary ones and then sort of 3 secondary ones. They don't all happen at the same time, but they can. You could have 5 out of the 6, 3 out of the 6, 4 out of the 6, whatever it may be. But what we're going to talk about first are the 3 primary ways that lordosis affects the body. If you want help correcting lordosis, please click the link below, go through to my How to Correct Lordosis online 12-week program, where I take you through in a progressive manner stretches and exercises to help you correct your lordosis. There's also additional tutorials and workshops to help add and help you get more from the program itself. The primary effect and lordosis, what it is the hyperextension in the lower part of the spine. So a lordosis is an exaggerated curvature of the lumbar spine. So this position here is that, and you've got that excessive curve there. What comes along with that is the slack abdominal muscles, the protruding buttocks, and also, again, which is a result of that, or which can come along with that, is the anterior pelvic tilt. So all these 4 things sort of work together to create what is known as lordosis. But what most people will have is that, or what every person will have with lordosis, is that position here of the extension, or the hyperextended lumbar spine. So it's extended lumbar spine, slack abdominals, protruding buttocks, anterior pelvic tilt. The secondary effects and what can happen, number 1 is the sort of locked out knees. So when people go into this sort of position, they will tend to lock out their knees. They won't have sort of a bend in their knee, they'll be more locked out. So they'll be sort of in this position and they'll sort of walk around like so. So they've got the hyperextension here, they've got the anterior pelvic tilt here, and they've got the locked out knees. The other thing they can have, which is sort of 2 for the price of 1 if you will, is the internal rotation of the knee. So they'll have it locked out, it could be internally rotated, and what that's also going to do is collapse the foot as well. So it's mainly the internal rotation of the hip, but as a result, a secondary effect, or a tertiary effect if you will, is the collapsing of the arch on the foot. And then the final one, which is sort of, let's just say it's above the lumbar spine. So what the body likes to do is it likes to maintain equilibrium. So if we get hyperextension here in the lumbar spine, what it will tend to do to correct that is it will bring you over. So you'll have not only a lordotic curve here where you're sort of hyperextended, but you'll also have a kyphotic curve of the thoracic spine to neutralize it essentially. So what we need to then be able to do is essentially elongate that whole spine to be able to correct the lordosis, but also the kyphosis. And with regards to the kyphosis, within the lordosis program, there is a kyphosis workout and workshop to be able to help you manage not only the lordosis, but also the kyphosis as well. Now we're looking at the stretches and the exercise. We're going to look at 2 stretches first, then 2 exercises after. So we start with what is essentially the psoas stretch, but it will kind of do the anterior musculature. So what we need to be able to do is get into this position here. Now what we don't want to be doing is going into too much hip extension. So we can go into a little bit of hip extension, because the important bit of this is getting the position of the spine and neutralizing it. So obviously, as I've talked about, we've got that anterior pelvic tilt. What we don't want to do is go into extension and just allow the anterior pelvic tilt. What we want is a little bit of extension, but also pull the front up. So we're engaging glutes. So we've got strong glute here. We're engaging abdominals here, and we're neutralizing the position of the pelvis. Just coming into that position could give you a stretch. What we can then do is, if we've got a bit of kyphosis with it, we need to then come up into this position. What we can then do to get the psoas a little bit more is come up into this position. So we're not overly exaggerating it. Now what you may need to do is use a bit of feel. So you may need to think, okay, I need a little bit more extension, but I still need to pull up here, and I can't get my arm up quite as high, but that's something I'm going to work on to be able to get me up higher. So you kind of need to go on feel. But But the important thing is setting the position and setting the hips. That will allow you, and that will tell you how much extension you can go into. Because if you start here, it's like, right, I've got my neutral pelvis here, but then I go in and then it just drops and you lose it. You don't want to be going there. You want to be staying there, in, stretch, arm up. Okay, there's my psoas. I can feel it sort of come up into the, just to the right or left, depending on which side you're doing, of the rectus abdominis, the sit back muscle. That will let you know you're getting the psoas. Obviously you do one side and then you can do the other. The second stretch is more for the secondary internal rotation collapsing of the foot. But if you look at the fascial lines that go through the body, what we have is psoas goes down into adductors. So what we then do for the adductors is come into this position and then just feel the stretch going down the inside of the leg. Now there are other stretches which can be just as effective, but what I'm trying to do is just compartmentalize things, break it down, and then keeping it simple to start with, as if you've heard me before, that's what I do, keep it simple to start with, and then you build in the complexity. So we've got a psoas stretch, and we've got an adductor stretch. Again, what we're trying to do is maintain that sort of neutral pelvis as we do it. So we're not hyperextended, we're not rounded, we're keeping the neutral spine, what will effectively be a neutral pelvis off the back of that, and then feeling the stretch down the inside of the leg. So those are the two stretches. Now we're looking at the two exercises. Exercise number one we're going to be talking about is the bridge. So we're going to come down into this position. Again, as I mentioned with the stretches, it's a simple exercise. We don't need to overcomplicate things at the start. That can come later, which is how the 12-week program is designed. Start simple, build the concepts, understand them in your head, be able to sort of practice them quite consciously, but then hopefully it should become just more natural and you just kind of go into the positions. But if we talk about the bridge, again, what we're trying to do, like I talked about with the stretches, is maintain the position of the pelvis. So again, as we come up into hip extension, we're not arching the back. We're able to maintain position of the pelvis. So you can see me, I'm able to sort of hyperextend the spine and then neutralize the spine. So I can keep that in that position. Activate my glutes, activate my abdominals, which is what I want because they're both slack. So we want those activated, and then we can hold the position. And that is exercise number one, whilst we are maintaining, number one, the neutral posture, the neutral pelvis, and also maintaining the neutral posture of the spine. The second exercise, we're going to use a cable. Now, this is an additional exercise, but what it does help us learn is the position of the pelvis. So we would come into this type of position, again, maintain that neutral position. But what I need to do, because we need the side that's down, needs to be closest to the cable. So we come into this position, we get the position of the pelvis. So that's number one. We bring the weight off the stack. Again, maintain glute, abs, neutral pelvis, push away, feel the glute and abs a little bit more, come back. Do exactly the same, out and back. And all we're doing with all of this is just maintaining those 6 effects, or we're not allowing them to happen. So we're getting the spine in position. Again, if the chest comes down, we lift it back up, get ourselves out of that kyphotic position. And then similar with the legs, we want to keep the arches up, the knees out. So we're, again, mitigating and going against those 6 effects that could be keeping us in lordosis. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button below and the thanks button. If you have a comment or a question, leave it in the comment section below and I'll be as quick as I can to reply. And finally, if you want to watch more of these videos, hit the subscribe button on the screen and hit the bell icon and you'll be notified when my next video is released.